these companions. So they took Khubayb ibn Adi and Zayd ibn Dathina, and they sold them in Mecca. And then Khubayb ibn Adi was executed by that family in Quraysh in Mecca, and Zayd ibn Dathina also was executed. When the Prophet ﷺ received the news, he was extremely saddened, because he had sent them to find out news about Mecca, find out news about Quraysh, whether they were planning something, and so on and so forth. Another incident that we mentioned, something, by the way, some of the details, and we mentioned that again, Khubayb ibn Adi was taken by that family, and because it was in the sacred months, this was the end of the 3rd year after Hijrah. So it was the sacred months, probably the Qa'dah, the Hijjah. They won't, and the Arabs still preserved that from the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam. They would not violate the sacred months, al-Ashhur al-Hurum. So they would avoid fighting, they would avoid killing, they would avoid doing any major sin during these months, except unfortunately for their paganism, which is the worship of the idols. So they kept Khubayb ibn Adi a captive until the sacred months were over, so they could kill him. And when it was time to execute him, we said he asked for a blade in order to sort of shave himself and get ready for meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We said as he was preparing himself, one of the toddlers walks near him and he gets hold of him. He actually sits on his lap. And when the mother of that child sees that situation, she freaks out. So he turns to her and he says, "You think I'm going to kill a child? We don't do this. We Muslims don't do this." Then he let the child go. And this is actually a very important thing for us. There's a very important lesson for us, that even if someone wrongs us, he is about to be killed. He's about to be killed. Yet, he doesn't take advantage of that situation. That's an innocent child. That's an innocent child. He has nothing to do with this. And even if it were an adult, still, you don't implicate an innocent person sort of to save yourself. Again, so some of the things that are done today in the name of Islam, killing innocent people, killing women, old men, children, and claiming, they do the same to us. This is completely a non-Islamic principle. It is against Islam. This is not how the companions of the Prophet ﷺ conducted themselves, and this is not what Islam calls us to. So when it was time for them to kill Khubayb ibn Adi, they took him out of the haram. Mecca, most of the area of Mecca is called al-Haram. It's a sanctuary. It is sacred land. You can't, whatever sin is aggravated there. Is aggravated. So it's not like any other place. The Arabs understood this. It was a tradition from the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam. There were the borders of al-Haram. It's a huge area. It's most of Mecca today, most of central Mecca is within the Haram today. It's only the outskirts that are outside of the Haram, outside of the sanctuary. So it's not only the Masjid al-Haram. No, it's most of Mecca today. So for them to kill him, they know you can't kill one in the Haram, in the sanctuary. You have to take him out. So they took him to the area called At-Tan'im, where today is Masjid Aisha. Masjid Aisha, where people go and do multiple umrahs. They drive, they take a taxi to that area. That's what At-Tan'im is. It was outside of Mecca. Now it's in the outskirts of Mecca, but it was outside of Mecca. So they took him there to kill him, because they're not allowed to kill people in Mecca. Still, although they associate partners with Allah, they have a pagan religion, but still, they observe certain things. So they took him to that area, and that's where they killed him. And they stabbed him with a spear. But actually they started cutting his body into pieces before they sort of gave him the last stab, or they finally decided to kill him. And he's the one who's done for the first time prays 2 rak'ah before death. If a person is about to die, there's a sunnah now that was established by this companion, and obviously confirmed and affirmed by the Prophet ﷺ, that a person before they die, they pray 2 rak'ah. And when he prayed them, he made them short. And then he turns to these people, he says, Wallahi, had it not been for the fact that you would assume I'm scared of death, I would have prayed for much longer than that. So for him, was the last thing to do in his life was to pray 2 rak'ah. And there are some lines of poetry that are attributed to him that we mentioned them last week. And just before killing him, he made a dua. He made a dua and he said, Allahumma qtulhum Subhanallah. Anyway, he said something like, Allahumma qtulhum badada wa la tughadir minhum ahada. He said, oh Allah, kill them each one at a time. Destroy them each one at a time, and don't leave any one of them. Don't leave any one of them. And subhanallah, some of the narrators of the seerah, they said, by the end of that year, which now it turned to be the 4th year of Hijrah, by the end of the 4th year, there was no one of those involved in the killing of Khubayb ibn Adi, except that he had already died by the end of that year. So Allah answered his dua. Except for a child. Except for a child and another man. This child and this man, when the dua was made, they basically, they sort of laid on their stomach. Why? To avoid the dua. Because the people of Quraysh still, as we said, they believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But they associated partners with him. And they believed the dua that's in the haram in Mecca or around the haram is accepted. So one of these people, he said, when Khubayb ibn Adi made the dua, I sort of took to the ground. I took to the ground. I wanted to avoid his dua. And there was another child as well, but his own father pushed him to the ground as well. So these are the only survivors of the people who conspired or who took part in the murder of Khubayb ibn Adi. That man, I forgot his name, who survived, during the time of Umar ibn Khattab, the Khilaf of Umar ibn Khattab, he became Muslim, by the way, later on. He became Muslim. During the Khilaf of Umar ibn Khattab, he became the Amir of Sham, the governor of the whole Sham area, Palestine, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, that area. He became the governor there. Umar ibn Khattab appointed him as the Amir. And when he was the Amir, some of the people of Sham didn't like him, and they came to Umar ibn Khattab objecting to this man being the governor of Sham. They said, we have some issues with him. They said, first, he's available during the day. We have access to him when we need him. But at night, he doesn't give anyone access to him. He's not approachable during night. Number 2, there's 1 week in the day that we can't see him, and he doesn't appear in public, and we can't reach him. Again, he's not accessible. 1 week in the day. And third thing, sometimes when he's sitting in public, he has this seizure. He has this seizure, and he sort of becomes very tense, and he faints, or he passes out. So Umar al-Khattab sends to him to come to Medina, because he wants to ask him about these things. Umar al-Khattab took these things seriously. So he said, some people in Sham, they object to you being the governor. And these are the 3 objections, the issues that they have with you. He said, okay, as to the first one, he says, I've given them the day and I keep the night to Allah. I worship my Lord at night. I'm busy during the day, chasing their affairs and fixing their issues and problems and so on and so forth, and managing all of these, the affairs of he's the governor, sort of the government. But at night, that's the only time I can worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I kept the night for Allah. I'm not going to give it to them. Number 2, 1 week in the day. He said, Wallahi ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I have only one thawb. One thawb. I don't have any other than that. And I wash it once a week. I wear it 6 days. Then I wash it 1 day in the week. I wash it and I wait for it to dry up. I don't have another garment to wear and appear in public. That's why they don't find me that day. He said, what about the third one? This kind of seizure that takes over you. He says, Wallah, he says, I witnessed the murder of Khubayb ibn Adi. I witnessed that incident when Khubayb ibn Adi was killed. And he made a dua. And when the dua was made, I took to the ground to avoid his dua. He said, ever since Khubayb ibn Adi made that dua, everyone in that group died except for me, but I always have this seizure. Since he made that dua. So he attributes, or he traces back this seizure to the dua of Khubayb ibn Adi. Okay, so Khubayb ibn Adi was killed, and as they were killing him, they said, would you wish, as they were killing him, and we said they cut his body into pieces, would you prefer Muhammad to be in your place now as you're going through this pain? He said, no, Allah, I don't wish that the Prophet ﷺ experiences the pain of a thorn pricking him. I'd rather die than a thorn hurting the Prophet ﷺ, causing him some little pain. So when they saw this, they said, some of them said, as Abu Sufyan, he said, Wallahi ma ra'aytu ahadan yuhibbu ahadan kahubbi ashabi Muhammadin li Muhammad. I've never seen humans love a human as much as these Muslims love Muhammad. He was still, Abu Sufyan, a non-Muslim at the time. So this was one incident of al-Raji'. One incident of al-Raji'. In the books of history, there is a confusion between this and the other incident we mentioned when the Prophet ﷺ sent 70 companions. These are 8 companions. The Prophet ﷺ also sent 70 companions called al-Qurra', right? He sent them to Najd. Or not really to Najd, he sent them to Banu Amir. So Banu Amir, as they travel to Banu Amir, they have to go through the area of Najd. So they were ambushed by a man called Amir ibn... Now Amr ibn Malik is the uncle. This is the other one, his nephew. Amr ibn Tufayl. Ahsant. Amr ibn Tufayl. Amr ibn Tufayl, he was a very bad man, notorious for his bad conduct, troublemaker, big troublemaker. And he realized, he knew about these Muslims, that they have come, 70 of the companions. They were given the protection by his uncle, who's sort of the leader of that tribe. Still, he called on some clans that they conspired with him. They ambushed these 70 companions and they killed them. This is called Bi'r Ma'una. Bi'r Ma'una, the area of the well of Ma'una. These two incidents are confused, by the way. So they're mentioned together in the books of Sirah, and some of the incidents here are actually put there, some of them are put there. So it seems one of the companions, and I'm going to take one narration because that's more in Sahih al-Bukhari, it's more in line with the story in Sahih al-Bukhari. The 8 companions that were killed, among them was Asim bin Thabit and Khubayb ibn Adi, these 6 or 8 companions. One of them was Amr ibn Umayya al-Damri, one of these companions. Amr ibn Umayya al-Damri. He managed to escape. So again, I'm gonna put him with the 70 companions. The 70 companions. One of them was Amr ibn Umayya al-Damri. When the 70 companions were killed, he had been behind them. Why? They were actually taking care of some camels. So they caught up with the Muslims later on. They saw the massacre from a distance. And it was him and another guy. They saw the massacre from a distance. So they said to themselves, let's go to the Prophet ﷺ and tell him what had happened. His friend said, no, I'm not going to leave my friends, companions being killed in front of me and go to the Prophet ﷺ. If they took shahada, I'm going to take my shahada as well. I'm not going to go back. So charges against these Amr ibn Tufayl and his group, and they also murder him. And Amr ibn al-Damri, when he sees this, he says, I'm just going to do the same. So he rushes towards them and they capture him. Now, Amr ibn Tufayl wants someone to send the news back to Muhammad ﷺ, because he did that to tease the Prophet ﷺ. So when he saw Amr ibn Umayyah al-Damri, he said, good, there's one of them, we can send him back. He took him, he said, you're my captive now, so you're like my slave. You're my slave, I own you now. But my mother made an oath before she died. She made an oath to free a slave who's an Arab, from an Arab origin. And I've been searching for someone, a slave from an Arab origin, I couldn't find. Now you're my slave, you're my property, you're my captive. So it's time for me to fulfill my mother's oath. So he says, now you're my slave, I'm going to free you. You're an Arab. So he says, now I fulfill my mother's. But this is a way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to get Amr ibn Umayyah al-Damri to be set free. So Amr ibn Umayyah al-Damri is full with pain now. He's seen about 69 of his friends very close. Among the best of the Muslims are being ambushed and killed, and he's been treated like this. He goes back to Medina. He wants to tell the Prophet ﷺ. On the way back, he finds two people. He asks them, where are you from? They said, we are from Banu Amir, from the same tribe of the guys who just killed his companions. And he's in a state of emotional confusion, right? So he assumes these are part of the same group. So he sort of seizes like a good moment, he attacks them and he kills both of them. And he says, I've taken revenge. He goes back to the Prophet, makes it back to Medina, goes to the Prophet ﷺ, tells him this story. The Prophet ﷺ feels extremely sad on the death and the murder of the companions. But he also feels really bad about the fact that Amr ibn Umayyah al-Damri killed two people, innocent people, had nothing to do with it. And these people actually had just come from Medina, because they had a meeting with the Prophet ﷺ. They had a meeting with the Prophet ﷺ. They were on good terms with the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ says, how come you kill innocent people that have nothing to do with it? And if you kill people like this, there are certain things you had to do at the time. You had to speak with their family, seek their pardon and forgiveness, that it was a mistake or whatever it was, there was a reason behind it. And you have to pay them what is called ad-diya, which is the blood money. The blood money. So the Prophet ﷺ said, لَأَدِيَنَّهُمَا, I shall pay their diya. And I shall contact their family and explain the situation. And he blamed Amr ibn Umayyah al-Damri for doing something like this. Again, you see that in Islam, life is sacred. And you can't just kill people. You can't just compromise on people's lives. You just can't. You can't. So the Prophet ﷺ, diya is a huge amount of money, by the way. It's not like something simple. You're talking about a huge amount of money. The Prophet ﷺ started gathering finances. Straight away he wants to settle this issue. Although his companions had been killed. But now he doesn't want to be on the wrong. He has to fix the situation. So the Prophet ﷺ starts gathering the finances. They run short of that. They have a treaty already with the Jewish tribes in Medina. The Jewish tribes in Medina, they have a treaty with the Muslims of common defense. If an enemy comes to attack Medina, we're going to defend together. If, again, part of that common defense is when there is a blood money to be paid, we actually contribute. We contribute. So if one of the Jewish tribes had to pay diya or blood money for some people, the Muslims have to contribute. So the Prophet ﷺ reaches to Banu al-Nadir. There were 3 tribes, Jewish tribes living in Medina. You guys know them? First one? Banu al-Nadir. Banu Qurayza. Someone else? Banu Qaynuqa. Banu al-Nadir. Banu Qurayza. Banu Qaynuqa. 3 of them. The Prophet ﷺ goes to Banu al-Nadir to speak with them first. He goes to them, they welcome him, they offer him a place to sit. The Prophet ﷺ explains the situation to him, they say fine. We'll contribute whatever percentage we are supposed to pay. We're just going to get it ready and bring it to you now. The Prophet ﷺ went with Umar ibn Khattab, Abu Bakr and some of the other companions. As the Prophet ﷺ is seated, one of them, as they go to one of their hosts, as they go to prepare the finances. They say, this is our opportunity. Muhammad is there. Someone climbs on top of that house where he's seated right next to, and he drops a huge stone, okay, which was the stone mill that they had. He just throws it on Muhammad. That's it. Done deal. We get rid of Muhammad for good now. You're not going to get an opportunity like this. They say, that's a good idea. One of them says, don't do that. Don't do that. Maybe the revelation will come to him and the angel will tell him. That tells you they know. They know. But still, they go for it. Jibreel comes to the Prophet ﷺ, tells him the story. The Prophet ﷺ all of a sudden leaves. He leaves the companions. He stands up and he leaves. They think he's going to answer the call of nature. No, the Prophet ﷺ leaves without any explanation, nothing. The companions are there, they don't understand. They see the Prophet ﷺ is gone. He hasn't come back. It's been a while. They thought something bad happened to him. They went to check. They find the Prophet ﷺ in the masjid getting ready. Getting ready for what? To deal with these guys. He's putting the army together. He's putting the army together. Imagine the Prophet ﷺ is wounded. The Muslims are being wounded. Again, the bigger context. After the Battle of Uhud, Muslims have become more vulnerable. People have seen that the Muslims are sitting ducks, easy target. They've had such a huge setback in Uhud. They can't retaliate. They can't defend themselves. They start snatching them from different directions. And that's why the 8 companions were killed, then the 70 companions were killed, and now those Banu Nadir trying to kill the Prophet ﷺ. Muslims have to make a strong statement. They have to make a strong impression that don't mess with us. So the Prophet ﷺ said, these people have betrayed the agreement with us. They try to kill the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet ﷺ puts the army together. He heads towards them, sets a siege on them, on Banu Nadir. There are 700 fighters, Banu Nadir. They brought together all their fighters, 700 men, fighters. And they had their own, Banu Nadir, they had their own sort of, what's called Atam. It's more like a fortress. That's how they lived. They had their own walls. They lived in closed walls. That was their area, sort of their village. It was more like a fortress. So they close it. It's very it's hard to break into it. They shut all the doors and they get ready to defend it. The Prophet ﷺ says, we're not going to leave you. They said, okay, go ahead, do what you want. Now the hypocrites send to Banu Nadir. They tell them, don't respond to Muhammad. If he fights you, we're going to side with you. Don't worry, we're going to defend you. We're there for you. Really? Okay. No worries. I thought I explained enough. Okay. So the Prophet sets a siege, and the hypocrites let Banu Nadir down. They just gave them false promises. So the Prophet ﷺ says to them, they try to bargain with the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet says no. Ultimately, they reach a point where the Prophet ﷺ gives them the ruling, you guys, تخرجون من المدينة ولا تساكنوني فيها أبدا. You get out of Medina, exile. Get out of Medina, I'm going to spare your souls. You get out of Medina, leave it alone, don't live with me in Medina. They agree to that. That's the deal. So they start getting everything ready. They get their own personal belongings. And just before that, they had just outside of their fortress, they had a lot of palm trees, date trees. The Prophet ﷺ gives the instructions to the Muslims to start burning them. Because you could set a siege around these people for months and they won't come out. Why? Because they have their food, they have their drink, they're self-sufficient, they don't need anything. They can live there for years. So the Prophet ﷺ realized we have to push them by burning their trees. So they started burning some of the trees. When they see this, that's the time they reach out to the Prophet ﷺ and they say, we want an agreement. They thought they might be able to bargain with the Prophet ﷺ and get a good deal. But the Prophet ﷺ said, that's it, you leave Medina. And you can only carry what your camels can carry. That's it. So each one gets a camel. Whatever that camel can carry, you don't take anything else. You take a full load of camel for each person, and after that, you guys have to leave everything behind. So they start gathering their personal belongings, the precious things they have, as much as possible. And then whatever is left, they start doing what? Whatever things they had to leave, they start destroying these things. They say, we're not going to take it. We're not going to let the Muslims benefit from it. So let's break it. So they start breaking and burning their own belongings that they could not carry with them. And they start even breaking their own houses. They said, if we're going to leave this behind, we're not going to let the Muslims benefit from that at all. And that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed Surah Al-Hashr. Surah Al-Hashr talks about this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, سبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم هو الذي أخرج الذين كفروا من أهل الكتاب من ديارهم لأول الحشر. It's Allah who has expelled out of sort of Medina those people of the scripture, and this will be the beginning of the day of judgment. Basically, because the day of judgment, al-mahshar, where people are going to be gathered, is going to be in a Sham, by the way. It's going to be in a Sham area. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said He's pushing some of the population of the earth towards the Sham as a sort of the beginning of, al-Hashr, the day of judgment. لأول حشر ما ظننتم أن يخرجوا. You thought they would not leave their territory. وظنوا أنهم مانعتهم حصونهم من الله. And they thought their fortress is going to protect them from Allah, from the decision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وظنوا أنهم مانعتهم حصونهم من الله فأتاهم الله من حيث لم يحتسبوا. Allah caused an attack to come to them from where they never expected. وقذف في قلوبهم الرعب. And Allah struck fear in their hearts. يخربون بيوتهم بأيديهم وأيدي المؤمنين. They break their houses in their own hands. So they start breaking their belongings. Why? Because they're not going to carry them with them. فاعتبروا يا أولي الأبصار, or people of sight, take lessons from that. So they were expelled, and where did they travel? They go to the north of Medina. They go to Khaybar. They settle in Khaybar. And they actually so in Khaybar there was already they had already been some Jewish population, but Banu al-Nadir are very influential, very strong, so they take over in Khaybar and they become the leaders of Khaybar. That's going to help us understand something that's going to happen during the same year, later on. So that's the story of Banu al-Nadir. Now the Prophet ﷺ, after the murder of the 70 companions, we said he makes dua, which is called dua un-nawazil or qunut un-nawazil. At the end, last rak'ah of every salah, the Prophet ﷺ raises his hands after ruku', and he makes dua upon Ri'l and Dhakwan and Usayya, the three tribes who murdered the 70 companions. Ri'l, Dhakwan, Usayya. Okay, so these are the three. The Prophet ﷺ made dua against them for a month. Every salah, the last rak'ah of every salah. Then the Prophet ﷺ, after that month, he puts an army together and he marches towards the land of Ri'l, Dhakwan and Usayya, these three tribes. The Prophet wants to fight them. He wants to fight them. Now before that, what happens? The dua of the Prophet ﷺ in qunut was accepted. Again, Malik ibn al-Tufayl, the one who conspired to kill 70 companions. Because the Prophet ﷺ was making dua, what happened? He suffered from a disease. And that disease made his limbs swell. So obviously this is a disease that happens, that affects the lymph system in the body, where the hands, thighs swell. And in the past they used to call it the elephant disease, da'ul fil. Why? Because the limbs of that person become more like an elephant. They really like their arms and their thighs and legs swell exponentially. And it still happens until today. I don't know what they call it. What's the scientific name for it? What's the modern? Huh?
Elephantiasis.
I can't say this. That's difficult for me. But it has to do with the elephant, sort of the elephant, yeah. So he actually suffered from this. He suffered from this, but with another thing. His body starts to produce, to stink. It gives that repulsive smell to the point that all of his family members abandoned him, stayed away from him. Except for one of his wives stays with him. But then he gets frustrated because everyone leaves him, even his followers, they give up on him and he's alone. He gets really frustrated and he says, like, I'm gonna die just like this. So he calls for his horse. He rides on his horse, obviously it's very difficult. He rides on his horse and he dies as he's just riding on his horse. And that's it. And no one even buries him. People stay away from him. Because people at that time were fearful of plagues, by the way, which are very common. So no one came near his body until it decayed, and that was the end of his story. So the Prophet ﷺ puts an army together, and they go towards the area of Ri'l al-Dhakwan and Usayya, okay, in Najd, where the Prophet ﷺ is going to teach them a lesson. They hear about this, and they disperse. They sort of hide. They take to their hide. The Prophet ﷺ camps there for a while. He couldn't catch anyone. So the Prophet ﷺ says there's no need to stay. Before leaving to that military expedition, the Prophet ﷺ, you remember what happened previously before this? We said Sulaym. Sulaym was a Muslim, a man called Abu Talha. Talha. Talha, he asks for her hand in marriage. Remember, he was a non-Muslim. That was before Uhud. He asks for her hand in marriage. And she says, I can't marry you, you're worshipping a piece of wood or a piece of stone. And he says, I have gold and silver. She said, I don't want gold and silver. If you want to pay me mahar and dowry, that would be your Islam. So he goes to the Prophet ﷺ and he takes his shahada, becomes a Muslim, and he marries her. Now Sulaym was actually expecting. She was pregnant, she was expecting before, and she used to go with the Prophet ﷺ on every expedition, join him on every expedition. So she wants to go with him on this. It's called Dhat al-Riqa'. This expedition, when the Prophet ﷺ went to the land of Najd, to where Ri'l Dhakwan and Usayya, he went to teach them a lesson. It's called Dhat al-Riqa'. She wants to go with the Prophet ﷺ with her husband as well, Talha, but she actually feels the pains of labor. So she makes dua, she says, oh Allah, that I've always joined your Prophet ﷺ on all expeditions, and I want to go with him on this. So then she feels better and she just joins the Prophet ﷺ. They go and they come back. Before reaching Medina, she goes through labor. Before entering Medina, she gives birth to a child. She gives birth to a child, and the Prophet ﷺ says, whenever you give birth, send the child to me. The Prophet ﷺ, they send the child to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ does the same sunnah, the thing that he does, where he chews on a date, and then he takes his saliva and he rubs it against the gums of the little baby, the little child. And we said, if you're going to do this today, don't do it with your saliva. Do it with clean water, okay, preferably boiled water, and sort of let the date sort of melt, and get the syrup. If you can wear gloves, make sure everything is clean, and you rub it against the gum of the child. So it's a good, before the child receives any kind of sort of milk from the mother. So that's a sunnah. That's a sunnah to be. What other sunnahs that the Prophet ﷺ told us to do for a new child? Seventh day, making the adhan. Okay, although some scholars say the hadith there is weakness, but anyway, it's a message. Shaving the hair as well. And what else? Giving a name to the child. And doing the aqiqah, right? 2 lambs for a child and 1 lamb for a girl. For a boy is 2 lambs, 2 sheep, and or goats, and for a girl is 1 sheep or goat. 1 sheep or goat. Yeah, okay. The Prophet ﷺ names the child Abdullah, the son of Sulaym. Who remembers Salama? Huh? Yeah, no, but we're talking about Salama now. Salama. Remember her husband died. And the Prophet ﷺ said, he taught her a dua. What was that? Allahumma نعم اللهم اغفر لي وله وأعقبني منه عقبة حسنة. Oh Allah, forgive him and forgive me and replace him with something better. That's the dua the Prophet ﷺ taught her. She was pregnant when her husband died. She gives birth around the same time. She gives birth to a baby girl. And she calls her Barra. Barra means righteous. Okay, from Bir, righteousness, right? Piety. Barra is the female form of a righteous person. She calls her Barra. She gives birth to this child. Now, if a woman, her husband dies or she's divorced when she's pregnant, how long is her iddah? No, when she gives birth. All the way till she gives birth. When she gives birth, her iddah is over. Let's say a woman, her husband dies on Sunday. She's pregnant. On Monday she gives birth. Her iddah is 1 day. Her iddah is 1 day when she gives birth. And let's say her husband dies and she gives birth 9 months later. Her iddah is 9 months. So the iddah of a woman who is pregnant, whether her husband dies or she's divorced, is when she gives birth. That's when the iddah is over. The waiting period is over. So she gives a birth to a baby girl. She calls her Barra. The Prophet ﷺ asks for her hand in marriage. He wants to marry her. She's an older woman. Like she's like, probably that's the last child she's going to have. So she turns to the Prophet ﷺ and she says, Rasulullah, like, I'm an older woman. وَإِنِّي أَغَارٌ, and I'm a woman who has jealousy. I have jealousy, so that's going to put you in trouble. The Prophet ﷺ, and she said to the Prophet ﷺ, I can't, bear children anymore. That's it. I've reached the age, menopause. Like I'm reaching my menopause, so don't expect children. And she said, and I have like children to look after as well. The Prophet ﷺ said, your children are my responsibility. They become my children. I take care of them. And your jealousy, I will make dua to Allah that He removes it. So she accepts. She marries the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And subhanallah, Salama narrated a lot of special things from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. A lot of special things. For example, someone who's making udhiyah. You're not supposed to trim hair or clip your nails, right? Okay? A debate among the scholars, is this an obligation or is this a recommendation? Regardless, we're not going to get into the argument. But who narrates this story, the hadith on this story? Salama. She's the one who narrates it. In Sahih Muslim, she's the one who narrates it. So there are so many things that only Salama narrated. So she became the wife of the Prophet ﷺ. When the Prophet ﷺ hears the name that this girl is called Barra, the Prophet ﷺ says, لا تزكوا أنفسكم. Don't call yourselves names that are like you're praising yourself. Barra, righteous, pious. So the Prophet ﷺ changes the name of Barra to Zainab. He calls her Zainab. He says she's Zainab. So the Prophet ﷺ, again, we said the Prophet ﷺ had this habit, has this practice. When a name is inappropriate, the Prophet ﷺ would change it. Whether it has a negative meaning, he would change it into a positive meaning, or it has a meaning that actually sort of makes a claim. So this is why someone cannot call his name, for example, although there's debates about this, but you can't call yourself mu'min. You can't call yourself mu'min because you can't call yourself like righteous, for example, or something like this. These are names you should not praise yourself with. So you give a neutral name. So the Prophet ﷺ changed her name to Zainab. And she's still a little girl, and her mother is nursing her. The Prophet ﷺ marries Umm Salama, but he's unable to approach her. Why? She's busy with her girl. And the Prophet ﷺ never makes any intrusive demands. He respects that. Until Ammar ibn Yasir. Ammar ibn Yasir. You guys remember Ammar ibn Yasir, one of the early Muslims, right? Ammar ibn Yasir. The Prophet ﷺ says to them, yes, the Prophet ﷺ says to their family, Sabran ala Yasir, inna maw'idakum al-jannah. These are the early Muslims who used to be tortured. The Prophet ﷺ said, be patient, your promise with Allah, your appointment with Allah is in Jannah. Sabran ala Yasir, inna maw'idakum al-jannah. Remember his father Yasir and his mother Sumayya, and Ammar himself. They used to be persecuted by the people of Quraysh. Ammar bin Yasir, Umm Salama is the sister of Ammar bin Yasir. Ammar bin Yasir is her brother. So he says, come on, the child is there all the time. The Prophet ﷺ is not able to approach his wife. And this was a common practice that an uncle would actually, he said, remember the Prophet ﷺ when he was young, he was given to whom? To nurse him. Halim al-Sa'diyya, right? And he was a baby, little boy. He was given to Halim al-Sa'diyya. This is a habit among the Arabs to send their boys or their girls to another family, usually among the nomads in the Bedouin areas, for nursing and for other things as well. So Ammar ibn Yasir says, I'm going to take care of this girl. I'm going to hand her to a woman who's going to nurse her and take care of her, and let Salama, she's a newly married woman, let her spend time with her husband. Let her spend time with her husband. The Prophet ﷺ, he used to give a nickname to Zainab. There's each name has a short form, as a form of love and affection, right? So the Prophet ﷺ, for Zainab, he used to call her Zinab. Ya Zinab. It's like a small, like Muhammad. Now in the Arab world they call him what? Hamada, Hamuda, etc. Right? You give us a different version of the name. Like Husam, just for you guys, if you want to give him the nickname, the beautiful nickname of Husam, Hassuma. Okay, Hassuma. So from now on, don't call Husam Husam, call him Hassuma. I hope you won't be upset with that. Okay, let me stop here because some brothers asked for time for questions. So we're going to stop here, inshallah, and we're going to see next week, what are the things that are going to happen. So again, just to recap, the Muslims again are in a vulnerable situation. People are eyeing the Muslims for any opportunity to sort of attack them. Some attacks already happened. 8 of the companions were set up and killed. 70 of the companions as well were ambushed and killed. There was a lot of news that people were conspiring to fight against the Muslims. Banu al-Nadir tried to kill the Prophet ﷺ, and so on and so forth. So it's a really difficult situation. The Prophet ﷺ was managing such a complicated situation. It's very complex. Very complex. Enemies everywhere. People lying in wait to attack the Muslims everywhere. It's not easy to handle these situations. Muslims are still weak. Muslims are not strong to defend themselves. So the Prophet ﷺ had to manage all these affairs very skillfully. Yet they had their social life. The Prophet ﷺ was still teaching people Islam. There was revelation sent down upon the Prophet ﷺ, and he was sharing this revelation with the Muslims. A lot of things happening. So many things happening. And like the Prophet ﷺ, this shows a beautiful side of the leadership of the Messenger ﷺ, and how he was handling such complex situations so efficiently. So we're going to stop here. Next week, inshallah, we'll carry on. Questions? Yeah. You. Go ahead. You asked for the questions. I'm going to give you priority.
Yeah, last week you told about the adultery. Yes, you cannot go for the marriage with a woman. She has a profession like prostitute or something like that. Okay.
Not necessarily a prostitute. Any woman who's engaged in adultery, you cannot marry her.
Okay, but if I read in Surah Nur and in the ayah number that illa ladina tabu min ba'd zalik. So how does it work? Means
I mean, the verse says, until they repent and they change their ways. Once a person repents, that's it. And we mentioned that last week. We mentioned, as long as someone is engaged in this kind of practice or lifestyle, you can't marry them. Yeah. So what's the question?
But if she repentant, then we can go for the marriage.
Yeah, if she truly repents, changes her ways, or he changes his ways, like, yeah.
Now, before that, in this the same ayah, for example, if somebody did this thing, and in the time of the Islamic government, how does it compare that if means she could not or he could not catch by the government, and he make repentance, so he will not get any punishment?
No. Actually, a person who commits zina, they should not report themselves.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, they should not report themselves. The Prophet says, "Idra'ul hududa bishubuhat." Avoid punishments even by the slightest doubts. Seek for excuses. That was the approach. The man came to the Prophet and he said, "Ya Rasulullah, I committed a zina." The Prophet turns away from him. Umar al-Khattab says, "You should have kept it to yourself. Don't expose yourself." He came to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet said, "You probably just kissed, you probably just touched." He wants to push him away, but the man insists. Yeah. So yes, punishments in Islam should be like, if there's any way out, you should take that way out to avoid it. Yes.
In the story of the companion before he got killed, he made dua.
Khubayb ibn Adi, yes.
Before he got killed, he made a dua against the conspirators, the guy who were going to kill him. Then he said, "Destroy the people who were going to kill me."
Yeah.
And then among them there was a child and the guy who survived. You said they ducked. And is there any meaning that if you make dua and they went on and they slept on the stomach?
That's a good question. If someone really ducks, yeah, can you sort of dodge or duck when there's a dua? It's like a box, it's like a punch. But it seems they probably believed in this or something like that. Probably, yeah. I'm personally not aware if it has a meaning. Like if a dua is made and someone against a group of people and someone sort of takes to the ground, if that's gonna save them or something. I'm really not aware of this. Yeah. But good question, mashallah. But I don't have an answer, unfortunately. Yeah.
Maybe this response initially, maybe the fact that they ducked might prove that they have some fear of Allah and the rest of the people.
Oh yeah, definitely. We said the Arabs believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
But the people standing didn't have enough fear to actually take it seriously.
Yeah, probably just didn't occur to them to. Yeah, but they were scared. The narration mentions that they were actually scared when he was making the dua. Yeah.
But one thing I wanted to ask was, we know the story about the man that lived, the man that lived that had seizures. Is there anything that's known about the child?
I personally don't know much. No, I don't know much here.
So if the people that inspired him,
Khubayb ibn Adi.
yes,
Khubayb, yeah.
if they had done it, could they have avoided the consequence? Is that possible?
I can't answer this question. If everyone had ducked, could they possibly have saved themselves from it? I'm not sure. But I mean, I don't think there's any practical implications to this. Okay? Just make sure no one makes dua against you. Like imagine a mother makes dua against her son and he ducks, sort of avoid that dua. I don't know if that works, but avoid it altogether. That's the best thing, inshallah.
Inside the Sira, does it match with the historical books? Does it match with the story mentioned inside the Sira? I mean the Sira and the historical book. Do they matches, or there's a fact or conflict between?
Okay, it seems that you're making distinction between history, books of history, and books on the seerah. Interestingly, the only books on history are at the time of the Prophet ﷺ are about the seerah. So they are the same. So the seerah is taken from the books of history that were written at the time. like Ibn Ishaq, specifically Ibn Ishaq, and you will find a lot in the books of hadith as well. A lot of bits and pieces here and there. When you put them together, they actually make a substantial, part of the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. So what the companions, what the scholars do usually with the seerah, they take whatever is in the books of hadith, authentic narrations. This is sort of the backbone of the seerah. It's like a skeleton of the seerah. And then they look at the books of history where there is no like hadith narrations. These are just historical narrations mentioned. So and so said, or it was mentioned this and that. So they see if it's in line with that skeleton and it doesn't have anything wrong in aqidah or in belief or in fiqh or anything, and it's, as we said, it's in line with the main body of seerah, they would add it. That's how they sort of build together a complete picture of the life of the Prophet ﷺ. So it's they complement what you have in the books of hadith, authentic hadith. They complement it with historical narrations, but where there is internal consistency. So there's no contradiction. Yeah.
Can the Jewish people also have the historical?
We don't seem to have anything from other than the Muslims. Yeah, so the tribes like Banu al-Nadir, Banu Qaynuqa, Banu Qurayza, we don't seem to have any records from them really about this. Yeah. Speak up. No. No, he taught her something else. No, he just gave her a special dua to say, that's it. But like for us, when someone is hit by a calamity, say, Allahumma ajurni fi musibati, Allah reward me in my calamity, my trial, and give me something better than it. That's it. So final question. I don't want to keep you for
Can I make it two?
one. Kiz Isha, I don't want to.
Okay.
We have time for adhan and
I don't
salah.
know which one to give you. One is from last week about the Jordan Peterson that you mentioned.
Yeah.
He was, it's like a defamation of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. His giving context.
Okay.
Is there any and what you just mentioned on that issue? You're saying he has lack of information.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way in the future, or doesn't matter how long, to create a situation for him and the like, people like him, to give them the proper information?
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned last week Jordan Peterson, some of the comments he made about the Prophet ﷺ and about Islam, the history of Islam. And he said he's studying, he's trying to figure out, but he hasn't really got his head around it. Still, he doesn't see the point there. We would say, I mean, you're suggesting if like this information can be reached, I won't say defamation, because if someone says, I'm trying really earnestly, I'm trying to figure out something, we can't claim something else. He's probably trying. And we have to, as well, this is a skill we probably Muslims need to develop within ourselves. Sometimes we're trapped in our own way. The things you know for granted, you think everyone else knows them. No. For a non-Muslim, for a Westerner who hasn't really been in touch properly with Muslims and with the proper Muslim environment, there's a huge amount of material written about Islam by non-Muslims. A lot of it is messed up. It's not easy for that person to navigate through all of this. Yes, Muslims have not been making enough statements. Unfortunately, some of the best books that are written for Westerners about Islam is written by a non-Muslim, like Karen Armstrong. One of the best books written about the Prophet ﷺ. But I mean, Muslims, there have been some attempts, but still, it seems we haven't really made a good kind of impression, or we haven't reached to a wider audience, Western audience, Jazakallah khair, to really provide good material. Oftentimes we seem to be speaking to ourselves. We echoing our own, sort of discourse, but we're not putting ourselves in other people's shoes to see how they think, what they go through, what is their research process, and what some sort of other material that is distracting and giving a bad name. We're not, as I said, we're not offering them a good experience, and we should definitely do more for him and for others as well. and this is something that grows, inshallah, as the Muslim community grows, and this is something for people who are in this kind of field, in academia, who are actually to do something to, write something that's going to get popular, becomes a bestseller books and so on. That's the way to go. That's the way to go. I mean, with these Westerners and non-Muslims, we have plenty of books for Muslims already written. There's plenty of them. So I'm going to stop here. Whatever question, I'll try to deal with it later on. It's time for adhan. Jazakumullah khair. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam. Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.